Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the KHRC LIHTC application webinar. We'll go ahead and just give 20 more seconds or so just to let people finish coming in, and we'll get started. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm very excited to see everyone here, and we're looking forward to our continued collaboration in the Kansas affordable housing development community. We do not have any handouts today. We have this PowerPoint, and we're going to be talking about the LIHTC application, and then of course the QAP. And so the QAP is already on our website, and we'll link everybody to everything at the end. So here is the agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. I know from the questions that we've already started to receive that many of you are continuing to digest the new QAP. And so hopefully today will further explain the application and selection process. I will give a brief summary and timeline for this upcoming year. We will talk about some of those threshold requirements, and we will be looking at how we will be selecting the applications. Haley Hishma will be going over the new application, and then I will go over the required documentation for applications. If there's time remaining, we will answer questions. And if there is not time, we will list and answer the questions and post them on our website and send them out to all the attendees. Also, if you have questions after the webinar is over, please send them to the Housing Development email address. And if we receive them by the end of the day tomorrow on Thursday, we can include those questions and answers in the summary that we will send out later this week. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the question pane in the GoToWebinar box. And again, we will address them at the end. I want to take a second to thank the Kansas Housing Association for hosting this webinar today. KHA has been a very valuable partner in the transition this year with the QAP and the application. And we are excited that they are so invested in the success of the Kansas Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. We are lucky to have such a great association represented in our state. These are the 9 sections of the QAP. We spent a lot of time on the organization and the readability of this document, and so I truly hope that it is a useful resource for you when you are planning your proposals. Today, we are going to be focusing on the limits and set-asides, the threshold eligibility, and the selection criteria sections. And again, Haley will give a tour of the new application. So this is the timeline that we're looking at for the 2021 year. The preliminary applications will be due on Friday, January 22nd. The preliminary application will look like it'll be the first 3 tabs of the Excel application and the required documentation, which will be related to site selection and the development team. We want to receive those items to my email address at aice@kshousingcorp.org. And then your preliminary application fee should go to the KHRC office. Within the week, we will make we will post the list of preliminary applications we received, much like the list that we posted last year. In the 5 weeks between January 22nd and Friday, February 26th, our staff will be evaluating the preliminary applications. And so we will be going out and doing a site visit, and we will be reviewing the site, the development team. On Friday, February 26th, you will get an email from me with your, if you are invited to submit a full application. And also instructions will be included in that email on how to log into ProQuorum. So the full application must be submitted through the ProQuorum system along with the full LIHTC application or the Excel workbook. Full applications are due on Friday, February 7th into that system. Within the week, we will again post the all of the applicants that we received, and it'll again be much like the list that we posted last year. We anticipate announcing our awards in the month of July. So the QAP lists or has a section that details all of the threshold requirements for all applications. It is split up into 3 sections. There's a list of requirements for all applications, and then a separate list for rehabilitation proposals and new construction proposals. There are a few threshold items that we will be reviewing at the preliminary stage, and that includes the applicant experience and the site control. We'll go over the applicant experience in just a second, but I wanted to note that the threshold items for the LIHTC management agency has changed since the last year, and we will also no longer be accepting or allowing market rate units with average income set aside. So we've received a lot of questions about the applicant experience threshold item, and so I just wanted to detail it here further. So all applicants must be listed as a developer and served as a managing member for at least 1 property in the state of Kansas or 3 other properties or 3 other state LIHTC properties. Those properties must have been placed in service between 2013 and 2019, and they must be in compliance. There's a couple reasons for this. One is that we're a small agency. We have a small division, and so we rely on the experience and the expertise of our development community. And so by requiring a level of experience, we know that the caliber of the applications that we receive will be at a standard that we hope to achieve. Also, we receive 3 times as many applications that we are able to fund. And so by having that experience, we're also able to manage the number of applicants that we allow. To qualify as a principal, you have to be listed as a developer, listed as a member and partner or partner of the eventual ownership entity, receive at least $20,000 for consulting or providing a guarantee, be an immediate family member of any of those entities above. And then there's a list of disqualifications in the QAP also. We also have a separate list of threshold items for rehab, and that includes the scope of work, and that will be what we evaluate at the preliminary application stage. New construction threshold items are here, the incompatible uses, zoning, utility connections, and income and rent targeting. We will evaluate the incompatible uses at the preliminary application stage, and that will include loud noises and let's see here, I'm getting loud noises and airports, things like that. This page details how we will be allocating our the low-income housing tax credits. So when we receive the full application, we'll basically pile them into 3 separate categories. And so we will look at the rehab proposals separately, and then the new construction proposals we will separate into metropolitan and rural. We will score the new construction proposals within those 2 categories, and we will fund based on the limits that we've set out here. So rehab proposals, we will first recommend the rural development priority, and then we will look at the priorities that we have listed in the QAP, and we'll take a look at those in a second in the next slide. But the rehab proposals, we will fund the lesser of 25% of our LIHTC or 5 applications. For new construction, we will fund no more than 2 new constructions in the metropolitan counties and 1 in each county for the rural areas. The metropolitan set aside will get 55%, up to 55% of the available LIHTC, and then the rural set aside will get the remaining. The things that we will also be taking into account as we're making our allocations are the maximum of $700,000 per LIHTC award. No principal will receive more than 2 awards or 10% of the available low-income housing tax credits. We will also be looking at our unique opportunities. We will be funding up to 2 unique opportunity proposals, and those proposals will fall into the set aside that they would fit into. So if we fund a unique opportunity that's a rehab, it would count as one of the 5 or 25% of available LIHTC for rehabilitation. We will also be ensuring that we're meeting our IRS required, not sure what happened there, our IRS required nonprofit set aside, and then we're allocating our home and National Housing Trust Fund. Okay, sorry about that, I got a little thrown off. Okay, so here is the selection criteria for our rehab projects. Again, we will fund, our first priority will be the rural development chosen property, and then we will look at all the other proposals based on these priorities. We made the decision to not score rehabilitation proposals, and there's a few reasons behind that. One is, a driving force behind selection criteria for new construction is the site, and rehab, the site is already chosen for the proposal, and so what we're verifying or what we're evaluating is the improvement to the lives of the tenants and the community that it's serving. And so we'll be looking at the amount of rehab work that's required for the project, the percentage of units that have rental assistance, if it is a LIHTC resyndication, if it has a higher ratio of hard costs to the development budget, properties that are identified by the local government for rehab, and then applicant experience. So for new construction, we will be scoring each application, and then there'll be 2 phases of the scoring. And the first is going to be the preliminary scoring. And so these are the how those applications will be scored. The first is the applicant and principal experience, the successful outcomes. The proposal will get 1 point for each property with a maximum of 10. For the developer or managing member or GP that has a property that's placed in service between 2010 and 2019, and that it meets the requirements that's listed in the QAP. There's one area of penalty in the scoring criteria, and applicants or proposals will lose 10 points for applicants that have requested a qualified contract after August 5th, 2020. If they have changed their management company without proper notice to KHRC, and if they violated any of the commitments that were made in previous LORAs. The next section is the underserved areas or subsequent phase points. An applicant can only receive points from one of these sections. So if they receive points for a metro underserved area, they will not receive points for subsequent phase, even if they could qualify for it. The QAP has a list of areas that are defined as underserved. Metropolitan is by zip code and rural is by county. And so applicants that are proposing sites in one of those areas will receive 10 points. The final section of the preliminary scoring is residential character. Proposals will receive 5 points if they are adjacent to or in a residentially developed area. The site has to be within the city limits and does not involve conversion of important farmland. Okay. If an application meets the scoring criteria that is in Appendix A, and then they were invited to submit a full application, the remaining scoring criteria will be done at the full application level. We will score the remaining items using the documentation that is submitted in pro quorum, again, by May 7th. The first section is the proximity to amenities. There's a maximum of 25 points available for this section, and the amenities that we are looking at is grocery stores, retail establishments, and pharmacies. The grocery stores are weighted the most, and then retail, followed by pharmacies. We will give up to 15 points to the application that has the least weighted cumulative distance in rural and metro regions. Points will be given to the rest of the applications in relation to the highest scoring application for the metro and rural area. I reviewed the video that we recorded for the draft QAP, and it details exactly how we will be scoring this, this private and primary proximity to amenities section. And it is, it's accurate to the final QAP. So I recommend reviewing that video if you have further questions. We will also have up to 5 points available if there are additional amenities, a grocery, retail, or pharmacy within, I think, 1 or 2 miles in metro and rural areas. And then there's up to 7 points available for public amenities, and those include community centers, public parks, libraries, and bus stops. The next section is below market loans and support. We will be giving up to 20 points for loans that meet the terms specified in the QAP, such as an interest rate at or below 1% and amortization of at least 20 years. Points will be determined based on the amount of support per unit. We will give up to 10 points for other support, and this will include land donation from a local government, impact or utility fee waivers, historic tax credit eligibility, and there's also a section for other support. And if the applicant proposes that support at preliminary application, we will review it, and then at full application let you know if it is eligible for the additional 10 points. The next section is the community revitalization plan or the opportunity area. So for these two sections, the applicant will receive the higher amount of points they are eligible for between the two sections. So if an application is able to achieve the full 15 points for the community revitalization plan, but only 10 points for the opportunity area, they would get 15 points because of the section G. And it's the same with the other way around. So if the application is able to achieve 13 points for opportunity area, but only 10 points for the community revitalization plan section, they would receive the 13 points that they were eligible for the opportunity area. So for the community revitalization plan section, an applicant is eligible for 5 points if they are a part of a community adopted community revitalization plan. They're also eligible for 10 points if they are in a QCT or their proposal was submitted because a community selected them through an RFP process. For the opportunity area points, much like the proximity to amenities, points will be given in relation to the other proposals in metro and rural area, the regions. The same video I mentioned for the proximity to amenities has a detailed account of how we will be scoring this section. So again, I highly recommend that you review that video if you have additional questions. The next section is the supportive housing in seniors or families. So for applications that are proposing to do supportive housing, they will get 10 points. And then for senior housing that commits to providing at least 3 of the following of the services that are listed in the QAP will receive 5 points. And if a family site has at least 25% of their units are 3 bedrooms or larger, they will receive 5 points also. The last section for the scoring criteria is the extended affordability or home ownership. If a property commits to a 40-year affordability, they will receive 5 points. Or if the property is planning to convert to home ownership and it meets the requirements in the QAP, such as it qualifies for the nonprofit set aside and that proposes single family units, then it will be eligible for an additional 5 points. In the event that more than one application has the same total number of points and there are not enough tax credits for all KHRC, we will make awards based on some tiebreaker items, such as the best location for the household served, higher energy standards, requested lower amount of tax credits, or has the highest percentage of 30% AMI units. So that concludes the selection criteria section. And so I'll go over the documentation required, but first I'm going to hand it over to Haley to take a look at the Excel application.
All right, okay. Let me get the application here and show my screen. Let's see. Sorry about this. I want to share a different screen.
I think it looks good that we see the application.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So we're good to go?
I think so.
Okay. So here we have the front page of the application, and this is just the instructions and all the documentation that Alyssa will talk about. For the first bit, this is where you can go to find which one, like preliminary we submit where. This will tell you all of those instructions, the dates, how to label it. So make sure that you take the time to read these instructions, and hopefully the checklist and the check boxes will be useful for you as you go through the application, and that way you can get everything in that you need to submit. So this section here, that the check boxes that are labeled preliminary, as well as the first 3 tabs, are the application that is due in January. And the rest of it, if you scroll down, there's the full applications. And since we have, if you're just applying for home or if you're applying for both LIHTC and home, you can see that there's different categories depending on what you are applying for. So hopefully this will be a helpful tool as you fill out your application. We have contact information here and the dates. So this is a good place to start. As we move on to the preliminary tabs, the preliminary application is just looking for site and development team information. There's just the 3 tabs. It should hopefully be pretty straightforward. And you won't be able to click on things that you're not supposed to. So you can type in your name. If you're in a census tract, you can check that. There's some drop downs. So
actually, it might not be working correctly because we only see the front, the instructions page at this point.
All right, let's see here then. What about that?
Yep, there you go. Perfect.
Okay,
yep.
Sorry about that. All right, so this is the first page of the preliminary application. I'll go back and check some boxes. So we'll just go through. You can pick your application or your allocation type. But you can't mess it up because you'll only be allowed to click on things that you're supposed to fill in. So hopefully that will be helpful if you need wondering how you find your latitude and longitude. We'll take you to the site to help you calculate that. So that's the first page. It's just basic information about your development. And then as we go on to the next tab, this is all about the team information. And you'll see as I scroll to the top, there's 2, if they have the 2 stars, It's saying they need a form. This form will be uploaded on our website by the end of the week. So that should all be there, ready to go. And if so, the property management company, they'll need to fill out a form. But we can just, this should be a percentage. And they might be a general partner or a limited partner, I guess is what I clicked on. But so we'll just kind of fill it out as we go. And then the last tab for the preliminary application is site information. And this is a good example of the application applying to multiple different programs. So if we scroll down here, we have this Uniform Relocation Act, which is Home and Housing Trust Fund only. So if you're only doing LIHTC, you'll just click not applicable. But if you are doing LIHTC, make sure you keep reading, because below that, you have a section to fill out. So you type in the name, you could type in the address, and it should be pretty straightforward. Then we go through. If you're not a nonprofit, you just click not applicable, and you'll skip over this page. Asking for set aside, syndicator information. So then unit summary is one that has changed quite a bit. So the content throughout the application has not changed. Let's make sure. It has not changed. Sorry, I can't get this. Okay, there we go. But the way that we formatted and we asked for the information is what changed. So that might be alarming at first, but hopefully as you work through it, it ends up being easier and more straightforward. That's our goal. But this, you just fill out the drop down. It'll get mad at you if you don't take a drop down. So 1 bedroom, we might have 5 units that are 1 bedroom, and I don't know what their rent would be, but and then you'll see how that's calculating that for you. So we can't click on that because it's calculating it. You can pick their AMI designation. Is it a LIHTC unit? So we'll just fill it out, and hopefully you have plenty of space to represent all of your units and give us an accurate summary. We'll put in the vacancy, and it calculates it all for you. So this one is different, but hopefully it's helpful and pretty easy to use. One thing is, with the application, we are going to, throughout the process, go back and update the application. So I'll show you some examples of where that's really applicable. But make sure that when you fill it out, even if it's kind of scary because it looks different, that you take the time to go through and fill it out as much as you can, as completely as you can, because that will save you work later as we update the application. And hopefully it's a good reference for us all. Let's see. So yeah, if you have covered parking, you would just check what's true. Here's a part where you would explain what the facilities are. We'll go down. This is the budget. The budget stayed the same, really. The categories here on the left might have changed a bit, or maybe they are labeled a little bit differently. But generally, it should be pretty similar to last year's application. And then if you have spots where you have something that we don't list, there's space for you here to tell us what that cost is. So if you see the specify below or specify here, let us know what that other is. And then this will automatically total for you, and then we'll go to the next page. And yes, to be clear, the preliminary application is only the tabs labeled preliminary. So you might be able to see all of these when we post the application, but you do not need to fill them out. That might be scary, submitting one that seems like it's half incomplete, but it's not, because we're only looking at those three tabs. And then come later in the winter and the early spring, we if your preliminary application was approved, then you'll get the Work Center login through Procorum. You'll go to your Procorum account, and it will have your application to continue to fill out. So instead of going through email like you would in the preliminary phase, you'll go through the Procorum Work Center from there on out. And some of you might be familiar with the Work Center if you use it with the compliance department. So it's the same program. Let's see, I'll keep going and show you an example of an update that would be helpful. So we're asking for utility information, check boxes again, should total it all for you. Keep going. Operating expenses, if you are real estate tax exempt, it's tacked onto the bottom here. Source of funds. So this formatting again is different, but the content that we're asking for is not different. So this is cash flow. This is like a good example of using the documents that we ask for and how that aligns with your application, because this should look, when you complete your application, all of the cells that have this gray shade to them, those are ones that will automatically be filled in. You do not need to fill in. And so this should look a lot like your first year pro forma. And if it doesn't, then we'll have to see why. But that's one way that we'll use the supporting documentation and the application together, is we'll look to compare those two things. We keep going. The development schedule is an example of the updating as we go through the process, because the schedule will change as things change in the development. So the date might be, I don't know, March 1st, and then, I mean, you can type in the year to be more correct, but we'll just fill it in and update it as we go, because those things do change. And then the last page is just for the Home and National Housing Trust Fund. So we'll just fill that out. Make sure I'm not missing anything. But yeah, hopefully it's helpful and straightforward. If you have questions, submit them in the question box and we'll answer them. But I think I'll turn it back over to Alyssa, and if I missed anything, feel free to add to it, Alyssa.
All right, thank you, Haley. All right, here we go. So just to touch base quickly on the questions that we've gotten so far. So let's see, we have a question about points for property for LIHTC only, or do CHODOs count? So I know in previous scoring we gave points for CHODOs, but we're not doing that this year. And we don't have points for being a LIHTC only or a CHODO. So it's just a matter of how the proposal looks when it comes in. let's see, does the entity have to be formed with an EIN and application? No, I think we can put in to be formed, and I think that the application, it does note that in the Excel application that we may not have that number at preliminary, and so that's fine. And Haley answered the question, it is the first 3 tabs. And so just to be clear about why we have the full application, so our goal is to be able to push the Excel application into the ProLink and ProQuorum system. And so we have to have the full workbook ready to go so that as you're filling it all out, we can push all of the data into the system. And so that's why the whole workbook is one larger piece, but we only need the first 3 for preliminary. Let's see here. If we wanted to leverage with home funds, is there a separate application? So, and I was going to touch on this now, but the application, the home funds, if you are requesting home funds and National Housing Trust Fund with tax credits, then it is all the same application. You will not have to submit a separate application. If you're wanting to do a trust fund only or a home only project, you'll continue to submit a home application or a trust fund application separately. But we will be, we'll go over the required documents that we have if you're requesting home and trust fund. The Excel workbook will be ready on Friday. So it is, it's almost complete. As you can see, it looks really good and it works. And we're just doing some final testing and some final working with ProLink to make sure that it's pushing through to the system correctly. So it will be ready on Friday along with the other forms that we're requiring with the application. Okay. So, so I'll jump back into the required documentation. Like I mentioned before, the preliminary evaluation, we are primarily looking at the site and the development team. And so everything that we're asking for is in relation to those evaluations. So the preliminary application, we're asking again for the first 3 tabs, and then the preliminary application fee, and then the site location maps, the evidence of site control, and the experience summary for the management company and the ownership entity. And those we are going to require on a KHRC form that again will be posted on Friday. For rehabilitation proposals, we want to see the scope of work. I recognize that we are not asking for the physical needs assessment with the preliminary application, but we do still want to see a scope of work. So those, that could change, that could shift a little bit from preliminary to full application, but we will be doing the site visits for all of the preliminary applications in that 5-week period. And so we'd like to have an idea of the work that you're planning on doing. And you know, we expect and we would hope that you would have some sort of idea of the work that you're going to propose to do. So again, I understand that things may shift a little bit, but we'd like to see what you're planning on doing. For nonprofit, for those applications that are going to be submitting under the nonprofit set aside, we want the resolution from the board. So after the preliminary application review and you have submitted, or the full application will be coming in on May 7th. And so these are the items that we are going to be asking for that submission through ProQuorum. We have not, there isn't a bunch of change from previous applications. I don't think this slide has anything that's different than what we've required in the past, with the exception of now we're asking for an Excel application rather than the Word Word application we had in the past. This page, we are asking for the as-is appraisal. And then we want to see that Opportunity 360 profile. And you'll get that through email. It's a free program or a free software system. And so you'll just request those profiles and submit the relevant pages. The signed application certification, it's the same as the last page of the previous applications, but we've just separated it so you can more easily sign it and attach it to the ProQuorum Work Center. For nonprofit applicants, this is the same list again of documents that we require. If you're also requesting home funds as a CHOTA, we want to see that recertification packet. If you're doing a supportive housing proposal, we want to see the memorandum of understanding that you have with the service provider and the supportive housing plan. Again, National Housing Trust Fund and home applicants are not required to submit a separate application if they're also requesting low-income housing tax credits, but we still need those documents that we required in previous years. And so those are going to include the signed statement of assurances, the documentation of match funding, the notices to sellers and donators, the community housing plan, and the proposal narrative. National Housing Trust Fund and home also comes with an environmental review. And so we need the following documentation to complete that review. Many of you know Barry McMurphy. He is a great resource, and he is an asset when you're getting through the home and the National Housing Trust Fund requirements. I'm sure he's very excited to see his email on this slide, so don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions about those processes. I truly thought that we would be going through this process, this webinar would take quite a bit longer than it did, but here are the just some final resources. This is the link to the QAP. This is the link to the housing development webpage, which will have the application and the forms on Friday. Again, if you have additional questions and about the QAP or the application, please send those to the housing development webpage or the email address. And so I see that we've got a couple more questions, so I'll go ahead and answer those. Let's see. So the application workbook will be ready on Friday. When listing the applicant's experience, are you looking for only the properties placed in service between 2013 and 12/31/19 or the last 10 years? So when listing the applicant's experience, so are you talking about for the points? I think you're saying, so it's not 10 years, it's 10 points. They're eligible for 10 points. I think that may be so we're looking at applicants that were placed in service between 2013 and 2019, and they're eligible for up to 10 points. I hope that clears up that question. If I didn't, please clarify. If we already have a PCNA, should we submit along with the SOW at preliminary? I would say that you should not submit the capital needs assessment with the scope of work, primarily because we want to make sure that we're evaluating each proposal the same. And so if we get a lot of documentation that's not needed or that we don't intend to look at, we really don't want to kind of have it muddying up the work that we're doing. So, and that's kind of why we don't want to have the other tabs filled out either at preliminary application, because we really want to focus on the site and the development team. So I appreciate maybe your willingness to send it in, but I don't think we want to see it at that point. Do you need a real estate appraisal at full application if you are not using the high RE cost for boost? I think that we do need a real estate appraisal if you are not requesting a boost for high real estate. So if you, but if you are requesting a boost because your property or your land is high cost, then we will order that appraisal. Well, the presentation, yes, the presentation will be available on the KHRC website. So we'll post the PowerPoint, and then there will be the recording will also be on the website. Yes, the video that we refer to is on the KHRC website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the main page, the KHRC main page, there's a section that says the Qualified Allocation Plan. And on that page, there's all of the documentation that we have regarding the draft QAP, the final QAP, and all of the resources that we did We answered questions and we did these videos, and so that's all there. But will you be able to send the PowerPoint presentation out? Yes, we can send out the PowerPoint via email to all the recipients, and then we'll also post it on our question. Please clarify the ownership entity. Let's see. Please clarify the ownership entity needs to be created at final application or upon approval of the project. That's a lot of money to spend if the project is not funded. Let's see. That's a good question. On the top of my head, it was at final application, but that may not be correct. So when we send out the final the question and answer, I'll answer this question in the email. I'm sorry, I don't have a clear answer just off the top of my head. So that's all the questions that we have right now. We can wait for a little bit if there's additional questions. We'll still go ahead and send out the so we'll send out the answers to these questions by the end of the week. And so if we get some more questions, then we'll add those to the list too. Let's see. As is real estate proposal or as built, the lender will order one before closing. So are you saying you need a different one at full application? I think that is what I'm saying, but I will double check and we'll make sure that we'll answer that fully in a response email. Are donations only awarded points if they are given by other entities besides cities? Well, if the city gives like a local trust fund or something like that, then that would be like a below market loan, or it could be an other support if they if you just submit that in the preliminary application. But donations will only be awarded if it's by land donations will be by communities. I think I'm answering our question, Rebecca. If I'm not, just clarify, please. What if our company has extensive experience in LIHTC, but is placed in service dates were prior to 2013? Will we still be eligible to apply? So the QAP, no, you would not be eligible to apply unless you have a co-developer who would meet that threshold requirement. Regarding forming an entity before a project is awarded, the issue is we form an entity and it does not get funded. We then have to set up an organization with no purpose and have to spend money to close it with the Secretary of State. Okay, yep, I understand, and I will. I'll verify with the application and the wording. I just don't have that answer right now, but I understand the issue and I will make sure to address it in the questions when we respond at the end of the week. If the land donation programs give from donors, if the land donation program given from a donor to a not-for-profit partner, can that be awarded points? So, no, we had discussions about this, about the land donation and it not being from a city. And the main point is that, or the thought is that it can be a big gray area about who is donating the land. And so the points are eligible if they are donated from a local government. But I will say that if they are donated from another entity, the benefits will be shown through the lower development cost, the lower tax credit request, and things like that. So there are benefits, of course, to having land donation outside of the points, but to get the points, it has to be from a government. These are great questions, and I hope that I'm providing helpful answers. And so if you have any other, please submit them. Otherwise, I can answer questions through through the larger email later. and then we'll make sure that we answer the outstanding ones and all of these and send them out by the end of the week also. Is there a minor cost with donation? Is it still eligible for points? Yes. So we have, I think it's a $5,000. So there can be a $5,000 cost or line to the land, and it's still eligible for points. Yes. Our consultant just confirmed there's no need to form the LIHTC ownership entity unless awarded. I'm confident that that's correct, and so I'll reiterate that there's no need to form the LIHTC ownership entity unless awarded, but I'll make sure that we send that out with the email later on this week too. Thank you. Is the deadline for 4% the same as the 9% projects? If you are requesting home funds or National Housing Trust Fund with the 4%, then yes, the deadlines are the same. If you are only requesting 4% credits, then those are rolling deadlines, and so you can submit that at any time. And I think in the QAP we have a 60-day turnaround to let you know if you've been approved or not. All right, seeing no more questions, thank you all for your time and your really good questions and your attention today. I appreciate it. Hello. And I hope that everyone has a good week, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.